Breaking news. Zelensky's statements about a threat to absolutely everyone due to the critical situation at the nuclear power plant. The head of state speaks about an unusual situation, and he is talking about the threat of a nuclear disaster that could happen literally within 10 days. Meanwhile, experts from the IAEA confirm that the situation is indeed dangerous and Russia is preparing a prolonged special operation. Find out what is known at this moment right now. This is TSN News with you. I am Alina Turishin. Subscribe to the channel, leave a like, and now let's get to the main story. On September 30th, the president of Ukraine announced a critical situation at the Zaporizhzhya Nuclear Power Plant. He emphasized that nothing like this had happened before. An emergency occurred at the plant with a power outage, and one of the generators went out of order.
The situation is critical. Due to Russian shelling, the plant has been disconnected from the power grid. It is currently being powered by diesel generators. This is extraordinary. The generators and the plant were not designed for this. They have never operated in this mode for so long. And we already have information that one of the generators has failed. It is the Russians themselves, through their shelling, who are preventing the repair of the power lines to the plant and the restoration of basic safety. And this is a threat to absolutely everyone. No terrorist in the world has ever dared to do to a nuclear power plant what Russia is doing now. And it is right that the world does not remain silent.
On October 1st, the IAEA warned that if the blackout at the Zaporizhzhya NPP continues, it could lead to a nuclear disaster. The reserve fuel for the backup diesel generators will last only 10 days. In the event of a complete shutdown of the backup systems, there is a risk of nuclear fuel meltdown. The head of the Department of Nuclear Power Engineering at the Institute for Nuclear Power Plant Safety Problems in Ukraine, Doctor of Technical Sciences Volodymyr Borysenko, commented on the IAEA's statement to TSN.ua. He noted that the blackout at the nuclear power plant is indeed ongoing. This is already the 10th incident since the beginning of the invasion. Previously, outages lasted a maximum of 1 day. Usually they lasted several hours, 10 to 12, but now the situation is critical. The uninterrupted power outage has been ongoing for 9 days.
What is the matter most likely, and why is the IAEA reporting various dangers there? There really are dangers because this is a nuclear power plant. The main danger is that a large amount of fuel is stored there, several thousand tons. In general, at the Zaporizhzhya plant, that's a very large quantity. And indeed, it is dangerous if the conditions of its storage are violated.
According to Borysenko, safe storage of nuclear fuel requires stable electricity supply, which ensures the circulation of water through the systems where it is stored, particularly through the reactor cores and spent fuel pools. This is a critically important task. At the same time, it has already been more than 3 years since the reactors were shut down, and for most of them, almost 3.5 years, since they have not been operating since the spring of 2022.
The energy release in this fuel, which is dangerous, has already decreased significantly by hundreds of times. That's why this issue should have been raised when the plant was operating under Russian control from March to August or even September of 2022. Back then, when it was under Ukrainian control, people claimed it was dangerous, as if our operators were at fault. Now it's become clear that this is not the case, and the current situation is as follows. Previously, as we've already mentioned, repairs were not carried out quickly enough, and today no one is dealing with this at all. Most likely, the Russian side wants to use this situation for their own purposes. Now they are trying to stir up hysteria, claiming there isn't enough diesel, that the Ukrainian side will supposedly start playing games, or even bomb the diesel generators, tanks, and reserves themselves. All this noise is being used with the help of the IAEA to try to connect the Zaporizhzhya plant to the Russian power grid. And in this way, to take control of the Zaporizhzhya plant and be able to carry out various manipulations or covert operations there, which are extremely dangerous.
According to Borysenko, if this happens, Russia will gain an additional tool to influence Ukraine's actions, essentially giving it the ability to blackmail the country. Currently, even if the diesel fuel reserves for the backup generators are depleted, the plant can remain in a safe condition for several more weeks thanks to passive heat removal. At the same time, to maintain the cooling system, it is sufficient to run the diesel generators once a day for a few hours to replenish the water supply.
The Russian side has set a task there for the management to ensure 100% of the generators are operational. A former presidential administration official and the current head of Rosatom have been tasked with launching 1 or even 2 power units at the Zaporizhzhya plant this year. Without connecting to the Russian system, these operations cannot be carried out because today it is under Ukraine's control and the transmission line is still damaged. Well, the situation is briefly as follows. The danger is real and varied, but all of this is a drawn-out special operation, which will be aimed at in a day or two, claiming that the Ukrainian side has bombed everything and that diesel reserves are running out, so it will be necessary to switch over and connect to Russia because the Ukrainian transmission line is damaged and this will pose great dangers. Well, I think many people understand this.
The expert also explained in detail what is meant by the melting of nuclear fuel in the event of a complete shutdown of backup systems. According to him, this means a critical increase in temperature in the reactor core and in the spent fuel pools. If there is no power supply for the cooling system and the water stops circulating, the fuel begins to overheat.
Well, look, what is the danger posed by a nuclear power plant? That is, it uses nuclear fuel of a certain type, and in the process of this reaction, when energy is released, radioactive elements accumulate in the fuel, which are radioactive and, accordingly, emit various particles, alpha, beta, gamma, and neutrons. And when these particles are emitted from the fuel, they carry energy with them. And this energy is released into the surrounding environment, directly into the fuel and the structural elements. And if you stop removing this heat, it becomes extremely high. Well, for example, to put it simply, the power output of a single power unit is 3 million kilowatts, or 3 gigawatts of thermal power. The residual energy released in 1 second is almost 7%. That's 200 megawatts. Well, that's also a very large amount of power. That's roughly the power output of a small power unit running on coal or oil or mazout. Today, this residual energy release has dropped significantly, I'd say by hundreds of times. And for the entire active zone and the spent fuel pool, where the fuel is stored, it's about 300 to 500 kilowatts produced. Well, everyone has a heater at home that uses about 1, 2, or 3 kilowatts. You can estimate how dangerous this is.
The expert explained that if you stop circulating the water, the situation can be compared to a household heater or an iron with the temperature regulator turned off. In such a case, the devices keep heating up continuously until they start to melt. And the same thing will happen with nuclear fuel. If the cooling is stopped, the fuel begins to heat up due to internal energy sources. The emission of particles causes damage over time. When the reactor is first shut down, the critical time before possible damage occurs is only a few hours. After a month, this period increased to 1 or 2 days. Today, after 3 years of shutdown, those in charge now have several weeks at their disposal. Eventually, the situation will become dangerous.
If there were any competent staff there, or at least if they were under Ukraine's control, then there would be no danger, and there is enough diesel fuel, and even passive heat removal would be sufficient. If you turn off our home heater, then in the air it cools down faster than it does in a closed room. It's the same with the reactor. If certain decisive actions are taken there to significantly increase the cooling of the ambient air surrounding the power unit's essential equipment, then there won't be any immediate danger or critical risk for 2, 3, or even more extended weeks.
The expert explains whether the IAEA can actually influence the situation. According to him, we have been observing the activities of this organization for many years, and in essence, it is limited to just making statements. At the moment, the IAEA is indeed confirming the facts, and the lack of cooling at the plant is an extremely dangerous situation. Amid the supply issues in particular, there are calls for certain agreements, including from Russia. At the same time, one side accuses the Ukrainian side of causing the damage, while the other blames the Russians.
The Ukrainian side stated that they are ready for 750, have done everything, and are prepared to lower an additional 330. The Russians say that this is impossible because the area is allegedly mined. There are ongoing military actions, and they are looking for various reasons to prevent the restoration of the supply as well. And because of this, as I already mentioned, they come up with various pretexts, whether invented or real, which they can create themselves and claim that everything is dangerous. If something happens, they can blame it on sabotage or threaten or even appeal to the international community, saying that the Ukrainian side is interfering with connecting to the Russian system.
And what do you think Russia is preparing this time? Write your comments under this video and stay with TSN.ua so you don't miss the main news. That's all from me for now. See you in the next episodes.